Hi everyone, welcome to our channel, Rebecca Stu and the Crew. I'm Rebecca, and today we have a really fun Dollar Tree DIY for fall, making this gnome. And so let's go over our supplies first. From the Dollar Tree, we'll need these DIY mushrooms, we'll need a dowel rod, and some of these harvest DIY words. We're also going to need a color your own ornament hat and a round or wood oval piece from the Dollar Tree, some of the large craft sticks, 2 of the tower blocks, and a few of these wood craft cubes. We're also going to need something for the base. I'm going to use the spaced out sign. We'll need 2 mini hay bales and 1 of these sunflowers to decorate our hat. We're also going to use some different ribbon and material of choice. You could also use scrapbook paper or just paint. We're also going to need some moss sheets and some loose reindeer moss. We'll need some different paint brushes and some scissors and some hot glue, some different colors of paint to paint our display. And then we're also going to need some Mod Podge and a dotting tool, or you could just use a small paintbrush, and you might need a craft knife. So let's get crafty. The very first thing we're going to do is take our 2 tower blocks and we're going to paint these blue. These are going to become the legs to our gnome. So we're making these look like blue jeans. So I decided to use this blue color, and then I painted all the way around because you will be able to see this from the back, and I wanted to make sure it had more of like a finished look. So once we completely paint our 2 tower blocks blue, we're going to take 2 of these small wood craft cubes from Dollar Tree, add a little bit of hot glue to one end, and then we're going to line it up right to the bottom edge of that tower block and glue those onto the bottom. These are going to become our boots for our gnomes. So taking our black paint, we're going to just paint them to look like shoes, and then when you're done, if you would like, you can just take like a lighter color brown or something and do a nice little thin line across the bottom to look like the sole of the shoe, or you could just leave them completely black. That is up to you. I did end up adding a little bit of light brown to the bottom to make mine look like they had soles at the bottom, but the moss kind of covered it up a little bit. You can't really see it all that much. You could just leave them plain black if you like. Now taking a small detail paintbrush, we're going to add some little black dashes down the side of each side of our tower pieces here, and this is just to look like stitching on the sides of a pair of jeans. This is just to give it a little bit more detail. It's really up to you if you want to add this extra detail. You could just leave this off. It's really up to you. But here's an up close picture of what that looks like with the stitching painted on. And we're going to go ahead and just set these aside and let those dry. And now we're going to work on our hat. So I decided to use this material that I found at the Dollar Tree that I just absolutely fell in love with, that they had in their fall selection of craft squares. And I just thought it was so pretty. So I'm going to take one of the witch's hats and completely cover it in a thin layer of Mod Podge, and then cut a square of the material and just smooth it out over the top of the hat. Now we'll take some scissors and cut around the hat. You can add the material to the back of the hat as well if you would like it to be decorated all the way around, or even if you're using scrapbook paper or just paint, you could do that as well. I just decided to cover the front with the material, and I went around it with a pair of scissors. And then in the harder to reach places, I ended up just using a craft knife to cut away some of the material. I didn't go in all the little cutout pieces that they had. I just kind of wrapped it around and gave it a smooth edge, and it looked just fine the way it was, but I did cut off that little bit of excess with the razor blade. And then I used some more Mod Podge, and I just go completely over the front of the hat with the material on it to seal it so that it will stay on long term and I won't have to worry about it trying to peel off. I'm going to let that dry, and then once it did dry, I flipped it over and I painted it the same color as I did his pants. And this is just to give it a little bit more of a finished look instead of having just the bare wood on the back of the display. We'll let that dry. And now taking this Easter egg ornament that I had left over from the spring, I'm going to draw on this little beard, 2 arms, and then the hands that just look like mittens, and the front of like a shirt or like a jacket. If you can't find or don't have one of these wood oval pieces, you could just use a circular piece. They do sell wood ovals all the time. I literally just saw them yesterday at the Dollar Tree. So they do have them available. They just might be some different sizes, or you could even use some craft foam to create an oval here. It's really up to you. So now we're going to take some light gray paint. We're going to paint the beard. Depending on what color paint you're using, you might need 2 coats here, but it's really up to you. I thought 1 coat of paint with this color gray was fine. I was going to add a little bit more detail to the beard anyway, so any spots where it was a little thin or I could see through it, I was going to add detail anyway, so it would cover it up. Then I'm going to go over the jacket part here. I'm going to paint this pumpkin orange. And it's okay if you can see your pencil through the paint. That just helps guide you where you want to paint at. And we're going to go over the lines that we drew with a pencil with a different color paint just to help outline the jacket and help those details to pop. So now we have the jacket all painted. We're going to go in with a flesh color paint, and we'll do the hands. We'll use the same color for the nose. And then take your detail brush and outline the pockets, the sleeves, and the edge in the blue. That helped to give it a little bit more detail and stand out. And then I took a dark gray paint and I went around the outline of the beard. I went around the outline of the edge of the ornament, and then I added a few more details to the beard in the middle just to give it some little hairs, and like I said, to help hide any little bit of wood that was showing through. And now we're going to add some more detail to the hat. So I took a piece of ribbon that coordinates with the hat. I just add a thin strip of hot glue across the brim, and then we'll add the ribbon right across the front, and then I cut it down so it was a little bit smaller and then just glued it on the back here. And then we'll take one of those small, really pretty sunflowers that are those little picks. I cut the wire off of the back, and then I just add it to the hat using a dot of hot glue. The small ones were the perfect size for these small hats. And now we'll start assembling our gnome. So we're going to just line up the feet. So I chose to just lay it on a mat so I could use the bottom edge to help line them up so that they were the same height, because this does have to stand. It's going to end up standing up on our base. So I wanted to make sure they were the same height so it would stand level. And then we're just going to attach the body to the legs here with the hot glue. And you'll want to hold that in place until the glue dries, because you want to make sure it dries nice and level. So now I paint the back. I decided to do the back to look like the pants. I just painted it blue where the waist would be, and then the top of it I painted it orange to look like the back of the shirt. So it's not a whole lot of detail on the back, but it was enough just so I didn't have the bare wood look on the back. That way it still had a little bit more of that finished look that I was going for. So while that dries, we'll work on the nose. So taking a craft knife, we're just going to score around the edge of the mushroom, we're going to work to get the top off so that we could use that as the nose. It's a little bit harder than it looks to get the top off, so if you have something else like a bead that you could use, that would work as well. And I painted the flesh color that I used on the hands, and we'll let that dry. Now we'll glue the hat onto the top of the oval, about midway down of on the beard. And then we'll glue on the nose. And then our gnome is finished. So we'll set him aside while we work on the rest of our project. So now we're going to decorate our mushrooms. I decided to paint 2 of them brown, 2 yellow, 1 orange, 1 blue, and 1 red. And I paint the whole thing the same color, the stem and the top and underneath there. And while it's drying, I decided the other ones I was just going to paint the top first because I needed that to dry a little bit quicker because we're going to add some dots. So I just painted the top of them first and then let that dry, and I went back in and painted the stems once the top was dry. I chose to paint the mushrooms these colors because I thought they looked really nice and they coordinate with his hat. Now, using that dotting tool from Dollar Tree, I'm just going to add some coordinating dots to the top of each mushroom. And now we'll use our base here. I'm going to use this spaced out sign. You can use any piece of wood that Dollar Tree sells. They have lots of different options. And I just slide my craft knife underneath of the paper and pull this off. You can paint over it if you want to, but I didn't want it to be on there. It was going to be too much to paint over it with the color that I was going to do. And sometimes it causes that paper to start to wrinkle. So I decided to go ahead and pull that paper off. So now that that's off, I just took a light green color and went over the whole entire top and then the sides. We're going to cover this with those sheets of moss, and they're not completely solid. You're able to see through them a little bit with the mesh, so I wanted a different color green underneath of it so that it would have like a two-tone look to the ground. So we'll just completely cover this in the light green paint. And then while that's drying, we'll work on our sign. So we're going to paint this Hello Autumn from the Harvest Wood Packs that Dollar Tree has out right now. And I'm going to paint the top the dark red to match the red mushroom, and then the dark blue for autumn to match the blue one. And then we're going to take 4 of those large craft sticks and just draw a jagged edge down the side to make it look like some weathered wood for our sign. And then we'll just cut the jagged edge pieces with our scissors. And we'll cut all 4 of the craft sticks down this way. And then we're going to use a 5th craft stick, and that's going to be to cut 2 small pieces of wood that we're going to use that will attach all of our 4 pieces together. And you'll see what I mean here in just a second. So I take that 5th craft stick and I cut it down to these 2 small pieces. And then I can use those as like a crossbar to glue the sign together. And this will be the back. And that's the only glue I put on them to hold it together. Then I paint the whole front of the sign with this light brown. And then I had a dark brown that I went over it to give it like a wood grain type appearance. So I just drew some squiggly lines all over it with a small detail brush. Then we'll glue the Hello Autumn to the front of our sign just using some hot glue. And then we'll draw some little nail signs down the side, which I went over with some black paint. And then we'll paint the dowel rod the brown color as well, and that will be the stick for the sign. And then we'll just attach that with some hot glue, and then we'll paint the back of the sign brown. And here's what our sign looks all finished. And now we'll start working on assembling the base, but first we're going to take a few of these small cubes, and these are going to help give us some height to some of the mushrooms so they aren't all sitting flat on the ground. And you'll see how we use these in just a minute, but we're going to paint these with the dark green so that it matches with the moss that we put on the base. And you might not need all of them, but I did about 8 of them. Then I just take that sheet of the moss, the craft moss, and I cut around the base here. I ended up not having it all the way down to that bottom edge, so be careful that you have it all the way down. If you cut it the same way that I did, you want to make sure it's all the way down to that bottom edge. It ended up being a little bit short, and then I cut some stripes for the sides, and then we're just going to attach that with some hot glue. So we did all the way around the side first. And then we'll glue the moss on the top. As you can see, it was just a tad bit short if I went all the way to that bottom edge. So I just cut some more stripes with some excess that I had and filled in the little pieces using some hot glue. You can see where some of that green paint in the center is shining through, where the moss wasn't completely filled in on that moss sheet. So that's why the green paint was really helpful with painting the base. So here's the top and the sides with the moss, and then I still have to put a little bit of moss across the front. And now we can start assembling it by putting our gnome on first. I'm just going to attach some hot glue to the bottom of his feet. And then I decided to put him in the back left corner, kind of at an angle. You do want to hold him on until he's dry. And then we're going to attach 2 of these small hay bales that Dollar Tree has out this year. I just love these so much. I thought they were adorable. And I put these kind of at an angle. And then we'll glue on a few of those small wood cubes that we painted dark green. So I wanted one of the mushrooms to be in the back next to the gnome, but I needed it to be a little bit higher because I want it to show from behind those hay bales that we put there. So we'll do 2 of the craft blocks there. And then we'll glue a few more around the base. So some of them I did 2 blocks high. A few of the mushrooms we have just 1 block high, and then the rest of them I glued directly onto the base. So to help hide those little blocks, we're going to add some of that loose reindeer moss with some hot glue. You don't have to completely cover the block. That's the beauty of the dark green paint. It kind of just all blends in together, even if you don't have it completely covered in the moss. And then we'll just attach the mushrooms to the top of the blocks. So I glue a yellow one to the front corner. Then I take the blue and the brown mushroom and I glued them together at an angle. And then I just glue those right to the front. And if you can see on the mushrooms, I ended up taking a brown Sharpie and I drew some little lines on the stems of the mushrooms just to give it a little bit more detail as well. Then I'm going to take this red mushroom and I glue that to a block with some reindeer moss on it. On the right hand side here, then next to the gnome, I have the 2 blocks where the glue has dried, so I put a little bit of the reindeer moss on this one. And then I'll put the mushroom on top. And then once we have all the mushrooms on, we're going to attach our sign. So what I discovered when I put the sign on, I really wanted the sign to be at like an angle. I didn't want it completely straight up and down, but I didn't want to stand with just the hot glue the way it was on top of the moss. So I had some more of those dark green cubes left over, which was great because that was a great way to help give the sign some stability and still have it at the angle that I wanted it to be at. So I glued a little bit of moss around the base of the sign to hide the hot glue that I used to attach it with. And then I'll take 2 of those small cubes that I painted dark green, and I just stack them and then glue the post of the sign to the back edge there, or the front edge of those cubes, and that helped hold it up in the position that I wanted it to be. It gave it stability, and then I just covered those blocks with some more of the reindeer moss. And this is our whole entire display completely done, with all the mushrooms on there, our gnome in the back corner, and our Hello Autumn sign. I had so much fun making this. I love the way it turned out. It's a little bit different for fall. We don't have just the pumpkins like we're used to. So I thought this was a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed learning how to make this with me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And if you enjoyed this video, please check out some of our other DIY videos. We post those every Thursday. And then we post what's new for the Dollar Tree every single Friday. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.